What if I told you that right now, at this very second, someone could be watching you through your own window? Don't look, not yet, because once you hear what happened to these 5 people, you'll understand why sometimes it's better not to know what's hiding in the dark. These stories are real. They happened to normal people. People who are just living their lives, going to work, sleeping in their beds, until one day, their whole world turned into a nightmare that never ended. Story 1. The Woman. Living in my walls for 8 years. Sarah was just 26 years old. She had everything going for her. A great job as a graphic designer in Chicago. Good friends. A cute cat named Mr. Whiskers. And she had just found the perfect apartment in a beautiful old building from the 1920s. You know those gorgeous old buildings with the fancy wooden floors and the pretty doorways that look like they're from a movie. That was Sarah's new home. The rent was cheap. Really cheap. Too cheap, actually. Sarah should have asked why. She should have wondered why such a beautiful apartment cost so little money. But when you're young and excited about your first real apartment, you don't ask questions. You just sign the papers and move in. That was Sarah's first mistake. The first month was amazing. Sarah painted the walls her favorite color. She bought new furniture. She had dinner parties with her friends. She would sit by the window with her coffee in the morning, watching the city wake up, thinking she was the luckiest girl in the world. Her Instagram was full of pictures of her beautiful new place. Her friends were all jealous. Her mom was proud of her for being so independent. But then small things started happening. Really small things that Sarah didn't even notice at first. A few bites missing from her sandwich when she was sure she'd only eaten half. A couple of cookies gone from a brand new package. Some of her yogurt disappeared from the container, just a spoonful or two. Sarah thought she was being forgetful. We all forget things when we're busy, right? She was working long hours on a big project for a difficult client. She was stressed. She was tired. Of course, she'd forgotten eating those cookies. Of course, she'd finished that sandwich without remembering. But then her toothbrush was wet one morning when she hadn't used it the night before. She stood in her bathroom, holding that damp toothbrush, and felt the first real chill of fear. Because you don't forget whether you brushed your teeth. You just don't, Sarah told herself. The cat must have knocked it into the sink. Cats do weird things, right? Mr. Whiskers was always getting into trouble, even though the toothbrush had been standing upright in its holder, even though there was toothpaste foam on the bristles. Even though Mr. Whiskers had never shown any interest in the bathroom sink before. Then came the noises at night. Sarah would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning to the sound of footsteps above her. Slow, careful footsteps, like someone trying not to make noise but failing. The thing is, Sarah lived on the top floor. There was nothing above her apartment but the roof, and an old attic that had been sealed off for decades. She called her landlord, Mr. Peterson, a nice old man who'd owned the building since the 1980s. He told her it was impossible for anyone to be up there. The attic had been closed since 1987 because of structural damage. There was no way to even get up there without going through Sarah's apartment and breaking through the sealed attic door in her hallway ceiling, which was painted shut and had clearly not been opened in years. It's probably just the building settling, Mr. Peterson said. These old buildings make all kinds of noises. You'll get used to it. But Sarah didn't get used to it. The footsteps continued every single night. Always the same pattern. They would start at one end of her apartment, directly above her bedroom, and slowly walk to the other end, above her living room. Then they would stop for about 10 minutes. Then they would walk back. This would go on for hours sometimes. Sarah tried everything. She bought a white noise machine to drown out the sound. She started taking sleeping pills. She even stayed at her friend Jessica's apartment for a few nights. But when she came back, the noises seemed louder, more insistent, almost angry. 3 months after moving in, things got much worse. Sarah started noticing that things in her apartment were moving. Not just food disappearing, but actual objects being relocated. She would leave a book on her coffee table and find it on the bookshelf. A mug she left dirty in the sink would be washed and put away in the cupboard. Her laptop would be moved from her desk to the kitchen counter. At first, Sarah thought she was going crazy. Stress from work, lack of sleep from the noises. Maybe she was having some kind of breakdown. She started taking pictures of her apartment every morning before leaving for work. She would photograph every room, every surface, showing exactly where everything was placed. When she came home and compared the photos to her apartment, her blood ran cold. Things had moved. The pictures proved it. In one photo, her couch cushions were arranged one way. When she got home, they were flipped. Her TV remote was on the left side of the coffee table in the morning photo. When she got home, it was on the right side. Small changes, but definite changes. Someone was coming into her apartment while she was at work. Sarah changed her locks. She installed a deadbolt. She even put a chair against the door. But the movements continued. Her food kept disappearing. Her things kept relocating. And the footsteps above her got louder every night, she told her friends. But they thought she was paranoid. Jessica suggested she see a therapist. Her boyfriend, Tom, thought maybe she was sleepwalking and moving things herself. Even her mom told her she was probably just stressed and imagining things. But Sarah knew she wasn't imagining anything. Someone was in her home. Someone was watching her. Someone was living alongside her, sharing her space, eating her food, using her things. The thought made her skin crawl. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. She lost weight. Her work suffered. She was falling apart. Finally, Sarah decided to set up a camera. She bought a small hidden camera online and disguised it inside a fake potted plant. She positioned it to record her living room and kitchen area while she was at work. The camera could record for 12 hours straight and upload the footage to the cloud, so she could watch it from her phone. The first day, nothing happened. 8 hours of empty apartment footage. Just her cat walking around, sunlight moving across the floor, completely normal. The second day, nothing again. Sarah started to doubt herself. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe she was having a breakdown. The third day was the same. Empty apartment, lazy cat, nothing unusual. But on the fourth day, Sarah saw something that changed her life forever. At 11:47 a.m., a section of her living room wall opened up. What Sarah had always thought was decorative wood paneling was actually a hidden door. It opened smoothly, silently, like it had been used hundreds of times before. And from that hidden door, a woman emerged. Sarah was sitting at her desk at work when she saw this on her phone. She gasped so loudly that her coworkers turned to look at her. Her hands shook as she watched this stranger, this intruder, walk into her apartment like she owned the place. The woman was thin, probably in her 60s, with long gray hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in months. She wore layers of old clothes, mismatched and dirty. Her face was gaunt, hollow, but her eyes were bright and alert. She moved through Sarah's apartment with complete confidence, like she'd done this 1,000 times before. Sarah watched in horror as the woman went straight to her kitchen. She opened the fridge and carefully made herself a sandwich using Sarah's bread, Sarah's turkey, Sarah's cheese. She took small amounts of each thing, careful not to take too much. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, sitting at Sarah's kitchen table like it was her own home. After eating, the woman washed her dishes. She actually washed the plate and knife she'd used and put them back exactly where they belong. Then she went to Sarah's bathroom. Sarah watched her use the toilet, wash her hands, and then she used Sarah's toothbrush. She brushed her teeth with Sarah's toothbrush, used her face wash, even applied some of her expensive moisturizer. The woman then sat on Sarah's couch and turned on the TV. She watched a cooking show, petting Mr. Whiskers when he jumped up beside her. The cat seemed completely comfortable with her, purring and rubbing against her like they were old friends. That's when Sarah realized this woman had been in her apartment many, many times before. Enough times that even her cat knew her. For 2 hours, this woman just lived in Sarah's apartment. She read Sarah's magazines. She watered Sarah's plants. She even did some light cleaning, dusting the coffee table and straightening the cushions. Then, at 2 p.m., like she was on some kind of schedule, she turned off the TV, gave Mr. Whiskers one last pat, and walked back to the hidden door. She pulled it closed behind her, and it disappeared seamlessly into the wall. You would never know it was there. Sarah left work immediately. She called 911 from her car, her voice shaking so badly the operator could barely understand her. When the police arrived, Sarah showed them the footage. Their faces went pale as they watched. They found the hidden door exactly where the woman had emerged from. It took them a while to figure out how to open it. There was a hidden latch behind what looked like a decorative piece of molding. When they finally got it open, they discovered something that made even the veteran officers step back in shock. Behind the wall was a narrow corridor, barely 3 feet wide. It ran the entire length of the apartment, with openings into different rooms, hidden behind various panels and decorations. But that wasn't all. The corridor connected to a whole network of passages throughout the building. These were old servant passages from the 1920s, designed so that servants could move through the building without being seen by the wealthy residents. In one section of these passages, between Sarah's apartment and the one next door, the woman had created a living space. It was about the size of a large closet, but she had made it into a home. There was a thin mattress on the floor, neatly made with old blankets. Stacks of canned goods lined one wall, along with gallons of water. Battery-powered LED lights were stuck to the ceiling. There were books, hundreds of them, stacked in neat piles, notebooks filled with writing, clothes hanging from makeshift hangers. It was cramped, but oddly organized, even cozy in a disturbing way. The police found the woman hiding in another part of the passages. Her name was Eleanor Marsh. She was 64 years old and had been a tenant in the building 8 years ago. She'd lost her job, couldn't pay rent, and had been evicted. But instead of leaving, she'd discovered the hidden passages. She'd been living in the walls ever since. Eleanor had survived by taking small amounts of food and supplies from different apartments, never enough from one place to be noticed. She knew every tenant's schedule, when they worked, when they slept, when they went on vacation. She had it all written down in her notebooks, pages and pages of observations about the people living in the building. Sarah's section was the most detailed. Eleanor knew everything about her. Her work schedule, her boyfriend's name, her favorite TV shows, what she liked to eat for breakfast, when she got her period, when she was sad, when she was happy. There were notes like Sarah had a hard day today, ate ice cream while crying, and Sarah's mom called. They argued about Tom again, and Sarah looks pretty in her new blue dress. But the most disturbing entry was from the night before Sarah found out. It said, "I think Sarah knows I'm here. She seems scared. Maybe I should introduce myself. We could be friends. I'm so lonely. She seems lonely too. We could keep each other company. I could help her with her work. I could cook for her. I could be the mother she clearly needs, since hers doesn't understand her. Tomorrow, I'll leave her a note. Tomorrow we'll be friends." The police arrested Eleanor for breaking and entering, trespassing, and theft. But she didn't seem to understand why. She kept saying she wasn't hurting anyone, that she was helping by cleaning, that she just needed somewhere to stay. She cried when they took her away, reaching out toward Sarah, calling her my dear friend and promising to come visit soon. Sarah moved out that same day. She didn't even pack properly, just threw her most important things in her car and left. She stayed in a hotel for a week, then moved in with her boyfriend temporarily while looking for a new place. She never went back to that apartment, not even to get the rest of her things. Tom and her friends packed everything for her. But even in her new apartment, 3 states away, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She checked every wall for hidden doors. She set up cameras in every room. She counted her food obsessively. She couldn't use the bathroom without checking behind the shower curtain first. She couldn't sleep without checking under the bed, in the closets, behind furniture. The building management sealed all the hidden passages and installed security cameras. But new tenants still report strange noises in the walls. Sometimes they find their things moved slightly. Sometimes food goes missing. Sometimes they wake up to the sound of footsteps above them. Even though they live on the top floor, Eleanor was sentenced to psychiatric treatment. She spent 6 months in a mental health facility. The doctors said she had developed a delusional disorder, believing that the building was her home and the tenants were her family. She responded well to treatment, they said. She understood that what she did was wrong, they said. She was ready to rejoin society, they said. They released her on a Tuesday afternoon in December. By Wednesday morning, she had disappeared. Her halfway house room was empty. Her bed hadn't been slept in. She had left a note that said only, "Going home." Eleanor has never been found. The police checked the old building, but the passages were still sealed. They checked other old buildings with similar architecture. Nothing. She had vanished completely. But sometimes Sarah gets emails from an unknown address. They're always brief, always caring. "Hope you're eating enough. That new job sounds stressful. Your new haircut looks nice. Tell Tom to treat you better." Sarah changes her email address. The messages find her anyway. She moves apartments. The messages still come. She changes her phone number, her job, even her name legally. But somehow, Eleanor always knows where she is, what she's doing, how she's feeling. The last message came just last week. It said, "Found a new home with lovely walls. The people here are nice, but not as nice as you. Miss you, my dear friend. See you soon." Sarah doesn't know where Eleanor is. Could be anywhere. Could be in anyone's walls. Could be in your walls right now, learning your schedule, eating your food, using your toothbrush. You'd never know. Not until it's too late. Not until she decides it's time to be friends. Story 2. The camping trip that ended everything. Marcus had been camping since he was 5 years old. His dad had taught him everything about surviving in the wilderness. How to build a fire without matches. How to find water. How to navigate using only the stars. How to read animal tracks. How to stay calm in dangerous situations. By the time Marcus was 45, he'd spent more nights under the stars than most people spend in hotels. He knew the wilderness like his own backyard. That's why he thought taking his teenage sons on a week-long camping trip in Montana would be easy. Alex was 17, about to start his senior year of high school. Ryan was 15, always buried in his phone or video games. Marcus wanted to give them something real, something meaningful, before Alex left for college. A week in nature, away from screens and social media and all the noise of modern life. Just a father and his boys. Bonding the way Marcus had bonded with his own father decades ago. They planned the trip for months. Marcus showed the boys maps of the area, taught them about the local wildlife, made them practice setting up tents and starting fires in the backyard. Karen, his wife, was nervous about them being so far from civilization, but Marcus assured her they'd be fine. He'd hiked this particular area of Montana 3 times before. He knew every trail, every water source, every potential camping spot. The plan was to hike 40 miles over 7 days through some of the most beautiful and remote wilderness in North America. They would be at least 15 miles from the nearest trail most of the time, completely alone in nature. No cell phone signal, no other hikers, just them and the wilderness. The first day was perfect. The boys complained for the first few miles about the heavy packs and the steep trails. But by lunch, they had found their rhythm. They saw a bald eagle catch a fish from a crystal-clear mountain lake. They found deer tracks, and Marcus taught them how to tell how old the tracks were. They set up camp by a babbling brook and caught trout for dinner. That night, sitting around the campfire, Alex opened up about his fears, about college, about leaving home, about becoming an adult. Ryan talked about a girl he liked at school, how he was too shy to talk to her. Marcus shared stories from his own teenage years, stories he'd never told them before. They laughed until their stomachs hurt. They saw more stars than the boys had ever seen in their lives. Marcus went to sleep that night, thinking this was exactly what he'd hoped for. The second day was even better. They hiked through a meadow full of wildflowers. They saw a black bear from a safe distance, fishing in a stream, just like in nature documentaries. The boys were excited, but stayed calm, remembering what Marcus had taught them about bear safety. They found an amazing camping spot on a ridge with views for miles in every direction. The sunset was so beautiful that even Ryan, usually glued to his screen, sat in silence for 20 minutes just watching the colors change. The third day they made good progress, covering 8 miles. The boys were getting stronger, complaining less, working together to navigate difficult sections of the trail. They helped each other across a rushing stream. Alex helped Ryan when he twisted his ankle slightly on a loose rock. They were becoming a team, and Marcus was proud. That night they camped by a small lake, probably 3 miles from the nearest trail. The water was so clear you could see fish swimming near the bottom. They went for a swim, even though the water was freezing cold, laughing and splashing each other like they were little kids again. They cooked dinner together, the boys now expert at working with the camp stove and organizing their supplies. But as the sun set on that third night, Marcus noticed something that made his experienced outdoorsman instincts kick into high alert. The forest had gone completely silent. No birds singing their evening songs, no insects buzzing, no frogs croaking by the lake. Even the ever-present whisper of wind in the pine trees had stopped. If you've never spent time in true wilderness, you might not understand how wrong this is. Nature is never completely silent. There's always some sound, some sign of life. The only time everything goes quiet is when there's a predator nearby. And not just any predator. Something that even other predators fear. "Dad," Ryan whispered, moving closer to the fire. "Why is it so quiet?" Marcus tried to keep his voice calm and steady. "Sometimes animals sense weather changes. We might get some rain tonight. Let's make sure the rainfly is secure on the tent." But the sky was crystal clear. Every star was visible. There was no storm coming, and all 3 of them knew it. They went to bed early, all of them cramming into the 4-person tent, even though they'd brought 2 tents. Nobody said why, but they all felt it. Something was wrong. Something was watching them. Marcus lay awake, hand on his hunting knife, listening. The silence continued for hours. Then, at exactly 2 a.m., according to his watch, he heard footsteps outside the tent, heavy, deliberate footsteps circling their tent. Not the soft padding of a bear or the quick steps of a deer. These sounded like human footsteps, but wrong somehow. The rhythm was off. Too long between each step, like whatever was walking had to think about each movement. Marcus felt Ryan trembling beside him. He put his hand gently over his son's mouth to keep him from making any noise. On his other side, Alex was rigid with fear, barely breathing. The footsteps continued circling. 1 circle, 2, 3. Then they stopped, right outside the tent door. Marcus could hear breathing now. Deep, ragged breathing that didn't sound quite human. It was too deep, like it was coming from lungs much larger than any person's. Then came the smell. It hit them like a physical force. Rotting meat mixed with sulfur and something else, something chemical and wrong. Ryan started to gag, and Marcus had to hold him still, terrified that any movement might trigger whatever was outside. The tent wall began to push inward, like something was pressing against it. Marcus could see the outline of what might have been a hand, but the fingers were too long, too thin, with too many joints. The hand pressed harder, and Marcus heard the fabric start to tear. That's when they heard the voice. "I know you're in there." The voice was wrong. It sounded like someone had recorded human words and was playing them back at the wrong speed. The accent was impossible to place. It was speaking English, but it didn't sound like any human Marcus had ever heard. "Come out and play with me. I'm so hungry, so very, very hungry." The hand pressed harder against the tent. Marcus could see now that it had 6 fingers, each one as long as his forearm. The fabric was starting to give way. "I can smell your fear. It smells delicious. Young fear is the best. Come out, young ones. Come play." Marcus made a decision. He grabbed his flashlight in one hand, his knife in the other, and burst through the tent door, ready to fight whatever was out there, ready to die protecting his sons. But there was nothing there. The campsite was empty. No footprints in the dirt around the tent. No sign that anything had been there at all. Even the smell was gone, replaced by the normal scent of pine and lake water. Marcus stood there for 5 minutes, flashlight beam sweeping the darkness, knife ready, heart pounding so hard he thought it might explode. Nothing moved. The forest was still completely silent. Finally, he turned back to check on his boys. The tent was empty. Alex and Ryan were gone. Their sleeping bags were still there, still warm, still zipped up, as if the boys had simply vanished from inside them. Their shoes were still in the tent, their clothes, everything except the boys themselves. Marcus screamed their names. He ran into the forest with just his flashlight, not caring about the branches that tore at his clothes and skin. He searched for 20 minutes. He found no tracks, no sign of a struggle, nothing. Then he heard Alex's voice, distant and dreamlike. "Dad, we're at the lake." Marcus ran toward the water. He found his boys sitting on the shore, holding hands, staring at the lake. Their eyes were wide open, but completely white, no pupils, no irises. They were mumbling something under their breath, over and over, in perfect unison. "It lives in the deep. It lives in the deep. It lives in the deep." Marcus tried to shake them awake. He yelled their names. He even slapped Alex gently. Nothing worked. They just kept staring at the lake with those horrible white eyes, mumbling that phrase. Marcus picked up Ryan and dragged Alex back to the tent. He packed everything in 15 minutes, working by flashlight, terrified that whatever had taken his boys might come back. The boys stood where he placed them, like mannequins, still mumbling. Then Marcus did something he'd never done before in 40 years of camping. He left most of their supplies behind and started hiking in the dark. He carried Ryan on his back and pulled Alex by the hand. They walked when he told them to walk, stopped when he told them to stop, but never spoke except to mumble that horrible phrase. 6 hours of pure terror. Every shadow could be the thing with 2 long fingers. Every sound could be that wrong voice. The boys never stopped mumbling. Marcus's flashlight died after 3 hours, and he had to navigate by moonlight and memory. Finally, as the sun rose, they reached the car. Marcus threw the boys in the back seat and drove like a maniac. No stops, no breaks. 6 hours straight to the nearest hospital. The boys mumbled the entire drive. "It lives in the deep. It lives in the deep." Then, when they were about 5 miles from the hospital, both boys suddenly stopped. They blinked, and their eyes were normal again. They looked confused, tired, but normal. "Dad," Alex said, "why are we in the car? What happened to our camping trip?" Neither boy remembered anything after going to bed on the 3rd night. They didn't remember the footsteps, the voice, the lake, nothing. It was like someone had deleted 8 hours from their memory. But they did remember the dream. Both of them, independently, without talking to each other, described the exact same dream to the doctors. In the dream, a tall figure made of shadows and water had come into their tent. It had no face, just a dark void where a face should be. It touched their foreheads with fingers that were too long and too cold. It showed them visions of an ancient city at the bottom of the lake, a city that had been there before humans existed. The figure told them it had been sleeping for thousands of years, dreaming of the time before life crawled out of the water. But now it was awake. It was hungry, and it was looking for more dreamers to join it in the deep places of the world. The figure told them they were marked now. They belonged to the deep. One day, when they were older, they would hear the call. They would return to the lake. They would walk into the water and never come out. And they would be happy forever in the city beneath the waves. The doctors said it was shared trauma, maybe some kind of gas leak from underground that caused hallucinations. They did brain scans, blood tests, everything. The boys were fine, they said, completely healthy. It was just a bad dream caused by stress. But Marcus knew better, because sometimes, late at night, he would check on his boys and find them standing at their windows, staring out at nothing, and they would be mumbling, "It lives in the deep." Marcus moved the family to Arizona the next month, as far from lakes and oceans as he could get. The boys seemed normal most of the time. They went back to school, back to their lives. Alex went to college. Ryan started dating that girl he liked. They never talk about the camping trip, but Ryan won't go swimming anymore. Not in pools, not in the ocean when they vacation. He says the water feels wrong, like something is pulling him down, and Alex changed his college major from marine biology to desert ecology. When Marcus asked why, Alex just said, "I don't want to study the deep places anymore." Last month, Marcus got a call from the Montana State Police. 3 hikers had gone missing at the same lake where they'd camped. They were found 2 days later, sitting by the water, holding hands, staring at nothing with white eyes. They were mumbling something over and over. You can guess what it was. The police wanted to know if Marcus had experienced anything unusual during his trip. He told them no. He told them they'd had a great time, no problems at all. What else could he say? Who would believe him? But sometimes Marcus wonders, what really happened during those lost 8 hours? What did that thing do to his boys? And why do they both draw the same strange symbols when they think no one is looking? Symbols that look like no language on earth. Symbols that hurt to look at for too long. The boys are 20 and 18 now. They seem fine, successful, happy. But Marcus noticed something last week that made his blood run cold. Both boys had booked flights to Montana for next month. The same day, the same flight. They hadn't told anyone. They hadn't even told each other. When he confronted them, they seemed confused. They didn't remember booking the flights. They checked their emails, and there were the confirmations. But they had no memory of making the reservations. Marcus canceled the flights, but he knows it's only a matter of time. Whatever marked his boys in that forest, whatever touched them with those 2 long fingers, it's calling them back. And Marcus is terrified that one day they'll answer. Story 3. Grandmother's Secret Room. Jennifer had always loved her grandmother Rose. Every summer as a child. Jennifer would spend 2 weeks at grandmother's big Victorian house in rural Iowa. Those were magical times. Grandmother Rose would bake cookies every morning, teach Jennifer how to sew and knit, tell her stories about the old days. The house always smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. The garden was full of flowers. It was perfect. Grandmother Rose was beloved by everyone in their small town. She volunteered at the library 3 days a week, reading stories to children. She organized the church bake sales. She knitted blankets for new mothers at the hospital. When anyone was sick, Grandmother Rose would show up with homemade soup and fresh bread. She was, everyone agreed, the kindest woman in town. Jennifer's grandfather Harold had died when Jennifer's mother was just a baby. A farming accident, the family always said. The tractor had rolled over on him while he was working alone in the field. Tragic, but these things happened on farms. Grandmother Rose had raised Jennifer's mother alone, never remarrying, dedicating her life to her daughter and later her grandchildren. There was only one rule in grandmother's house that seemed strange. The basement door was always locked. Always. Grandmother Rose wore the key on a chain around her neck, along with her wedding ring. She said the basement was dangerous. Old stairs that could collapse, exposed wiring that could electrocute someone, maybe asbestos in the walls. Children were never, ever allowed down there. Even as an adult, when Jennifer would visit, that door remained locked. Once, when Jennifer was 30, she offered to hire someone to fix up the basement, make it safe. Grandmother Rose had gotten upset, more upset than Jennifer had ever seen her. No, she'd shouted, then caught herself, forcing a smile. No, dear, it's not worth the money. I'm an old woman. I don't need the space. Promise me you'll leave it alone. Jennifer had promised. She wished now that she hadn't. Grandmother Rose died last month at 93 years old. She went peacefully in her sleep, exactly the way everyone hopes to go. The whole town came to her funeral. People cried and shared stories about her kindness. The minister called her an angel on earth. Jennifer gave a eulogy about what a wonderful grandmother Rose had been, how she'd shaped Jennifer into the woman she was today. After the funeral, the family had to clean out the house. Jennifer's mother was too emotional to do it. Jennifer's brother lived across the country, so Jennifer volunteered to handle everything. She took a week off work and drove to Iowa with boxers and cleaning supplies, ready to pack up a lifetime of memories. The house felt different without Grandmother Rose in it. Smaller, somehow, darker. The smell of cinnamon was gone, replaced by something musty and old. Dust covered everything. It was like the house had been holding its breath while Grandmother was alive, and now it was exhaling decades of secrets. Jennifer started with the upstairs bedrooms, packing away clothes and jewelry and photo albums. She found her grandmother's diaries from the 1940s and 1950s, full of normal entries about daily life, recipes, thoughts about the weather, sweet, ordinary stuff. Then she found the key. It was in Grandmother Rose's jewelry box, still on the chain with the wedding ring. The basement key. Jennifer held it in her hand, remembering her promise. But Grandmother was gone now, and the house was going to be sold. Someone would have to check the basement eventually. Jennifer stood at the basement door for a long time, key in hand. The white paint was old, peeling in places, And now that she was looking closely, she could see something she'd never noticed as a child. Scratch marks on the inside of the doorframe. Deep gouges in the wood, painted over but still visible. Like someone had tried to claw their way out. The key turned easily in the lock, like it had been used recently. The door opened on well-oiled hinges. No squeaking, no resistance. The smell that came up from below was sweet and rotten, like flowers left in water too long. Jennifer found the light switch. A single bulb illuminated wooden stairs going down. The stairs weren't dangerous at all. They were solid, well-maintained. Someone had been going up and down these stairs regularly. The basement wasn't what Jennifer expected. It wasn't some creepy, unfinished cellar. It was a finished room with carpet. It looked like someone had tried to make it comfortable. There was a small bed with a rotting mattress, a refrigerator that hadn't worked in decades, a sink with rusty water stains, and shelves, so many shelves. The shelves were full of mason jars, dozens and dozens of mason jars. In the dim light, Jennifer couldn't tell what was in them. She picked one up and held it to the light. Teeth. The jar was full of teeth, children's teeth, small and white. The jar had a label written in Grandmother Rose's neat handwriting. July 1962, Timothy, such a sweet boy. Jennifer's hands shook as she set the jar down and looked at the others. Each one labeled with a date and a name. September 1964, Lucy wouldn't stop crying. March 1967, Robert, beautiful blue eyes. December 1969, Anna, loved her red shoes. Jennifer stumbled backward and knocked over a box. Photos spilled out across the floor. Black and white photographs, yellowed with age. They were all of children. Some were smiling. Some were crying. Some looked like they were sleeping, but Jennifer could tell they weren't sleeping. Their skin was too pale. Their eyes were slightly open, showing only white. Those children were dead. In the center of one wall was a framed newspaper clipping from 1965. 5 children still missing. Search continues. It was from a newspaper 3 towns over. Jennifer read the article with growing horror. 5 children had vanished over 2 years. They were never found. The police suspected they'd been taken by someone passing through, maybe sold to human traffickers in the city. But Jennifer recognized one of the faces from the photos scattered on the floor. Little Timothy, age 7. Last seen walking home from school on July 15, 1962. Behind the framed article was a journal. Jennifer recognized her grandmother's handwriting, but the words didn't sound like the grandmother she knew. July 16, 1962. Harold brought home another one. A boy, this time. Says he found him walking alone by the road. Says the boy's parents didn't deserve him, leaving him walk alone like that. The boy cried all night. Harold got angry. I tried to give the boy some water, but Harold said I was too soft. July 18, 1962. The boy stopped crying. Harold says he's learning to be grateful. But I saw the bruises. I know what Harold does down there when I'm asleep. I hear the sounds. July 20th, 1962. The boy is quiet now. Too quiet. Harold says he's sick. Says it happens sometimes. Says we'll have to get another one soon. July 22nd, 1962. The boy died in the night. Harold buried him in the back garden, under the roses. The roses always grow so well. Jennifer dropped the journal. Her grandmother's beautiful rose garden, the one that won prizes every year at the county fair. She thought of all the times she'd helped Grandmother Rose tend those roses, mixing special fertilizer into the soil. There were more journals, years and years of them. Jennifer read with growing horror as the truth about her grandparents emerged. Harold had been taking children, stealing them from other towns, keeping them in the basement. He told Grandmother Rose they were saving them from bad parents, giving them a better home. But the children kept dying, and Harold kept bringing more. Rose knew it was wrong. The journals made that clear. But she was terrified of Harold. He'd threatened to kill her if she told anyone. He'd threatened to kill their daughter, Jennifer's mother. So Rose kept quiet, lived with the horrible secret, helped Harold bury the bodies in the garden. Then came the entry from 1970, March 15th, 1970. Harold brought home twins today. 2 little girls, maybe 6 years old. They look just like Margaret did at that age. Harold saw me crying and hit me, said I was being weak again. The girls are so scared. They keep asking for their mommy. March 18th, 1970. I can't do this anymore. The twins remind me too much of Margaret, of what Harold might do to her if I don't stop him. I have to protect my daughter. I have to end this. March 20th, 1970. Harold is dead. I pushed him down the stairs while he was going to the basement. His neck broke. He died instantly. The twins were still alive, but they'd seen too much. They knew about the others. They could tell people. I had to make a choice. I made it. They're with the others now, under the roses. God, forgive me. The whole town thinks I'm a widow, mourning her husband. They bring me casseroles and prayers. If they only knew. Jennifer found another door in the basement, hidden behind a false panel. Inside was a smaller room with 7 small beds. On each bed were rotting clothes, arranged to look like sleeping children. The smell was overwhelming. On the wall, written in crayon, were the words, "We tried to go home, but the lady wouldn't let us." Jennifer ran from the house and called the police from her car. The investigation that followed destroyed everything Jennifer thought she knew about her family. They found the remains of 9 children buried in the garden. 9 children who'd been missing for decades. 9 families who finally got answers. Horrible answers, but answers nonetheless. The newspapers went crazy. House of Horrors, the grandmother killer, decades of death. Jennifer's family was destroyed. Her mother had a breakdown. Her brother changed his name and moved to Canada. Jennifer lost her job when her employer said the attention was bad for business. But the worst part was the final journal entry, dated just a week before Grandmother Rose died. They visit me every night now, all 9 of them. They stand around my bed, holding hands, staring at me with their white eyes. They don't speak, but I know what they want. They're waiting for me to die. They want me to join them, to play with them forever. I hear them during the day now too, laughing in the walls, playing in the basement even though it's locked. They say I'm their grandmother now, their forever grandmother. When I die, I won't go to heaven or hell. I'll go to the basement with them, forever and ever. I can feel death coming. I welcome it. But I know it won't be an escape. It will be the beginning of my real punishment. Jennifer sold the house to a developer who promised to tear it down. But the night before demolition, the house burned to the ground. The fire department said it was arson, but they never found who did it. Now there's just an empty lot where the house used to be. But people driving by at night say they sometimes see lights where the basement would have been. 9 small lights, moving around like children, playing with flashlights. And sometimes people report seeing an old woman standing in the empty lot, surrounded by children. She's crying, begging them to let her go. But the children just laugh and pull her down into the ground, down where the basement used to be. Jennifer moved to California to start over. She changed her name, tried to forget, but sometimes she gets letters with no return address. Inside are drawings, clearly done by children, pictures of roses growing in a garden, pictures of an old woman and 9 children holding hands. The most recent one arrived yesterday. It shows Jennifer's apartment building in California. In the drawing, 9 children are standing outside, looking up at her window. At the bottom, in crayon, it says, "We found you, Cousin Jenny. Come play with us." Story 4. The Night Shift Terror. Let me tell you about David. David was just a normal guy, 28 years old, working as a nurse. He needed money to pay his bills, so he took a job at an old hospital. This wasn't just any hospital. This place had a dark, dark history that nobody liked to talk about. The hospital was called Riverside Memorial. It sat on a hill in Massachusetts, looking down at the town like a giant, watching everyone. Parts of this hospital were really, really old. We're talking about the 1800s old. Back then, it wasn't even a hospital. It was something much worse. It was a place where they locked up people they called crazy. But these people weren't always crazy. Sometimes they were just different. Sometimes they were just poor. Sometimes they were just in the way. Back in those days, doctors did terrible things to patients. They would drill holes in people's heads. They would put them in ice-cold water until they almost died. They would shock them with electricity. They would cut out parts of their brains. All of this was supposed to make them better, but it usually just killed them. Or worse, it left them alive, but not really living anymore. The hospital tried to hide this history. They painted new walls. They put in new floors. They added modern equipment. But you can't paint over evil. You can't cover up the screams that soaked into the walls for decades. And at night, when the hospital got quiet, that evil would wake up. David started working the night shift. That's 11 at night until 7 in the morning. Most people hate the night shift, but the pay was better. An extra $5 an hour might not sound like much, but when you're drowning in student loans, every dollar counts. His first night was quiet. Too quiet, actually. The other nurses seemed nervous. They jumped at small sounds. They avoided certain hallways. They never went anywhere alone. David thought they were just trying to scare the new guy. He was wrong. On his 3rd night, David met Nancy. She had been working at the hospital for 20 years. 20 years of night shifts. Her hair had turned gray early, and her hands shook a little when she held her coffee cup. She pulled David aside during their break. "Listen, kid," she said, and her voice was serious. "There are rules here. Rules they don't tell you in orientation. First, never go to the 4th floor. I don't care if someone calls you up there. I don't care if there's an emergency. The 4th floor has been closed for 3 years, and there's a reason for that." David laughed. "What? Is it haunted or something?" Nancy didn't laugh back. Second rule. If you hear a child crying in the halls, don't follow the sound. We don't have a pediatric ward. We haven't had one for 10 years. But sometimes you'll hear children. Don't look for them. Just keep walking. This is a joke, right? David asked. Nancy grabbed his arm. Her fingers were ice cold. Third rule. If a patient in the East Wing starts talking about the doctor, call security immediately. Don't try to calm them down. Don't listen to what they're saying. Just call security and get out. What doctor? You'll know if it happens. And David, I've worked here 20 years. I've seen things that would make you quit on the spot. But I need this job, and so do you. So follow the rules, and you'll be fine. Break them, and, well, just don't break them. For 2 months, David followed the rules. He stayed away from the 4th floor. He ignored the sounds that shouldn't be there. He did his job, collected his paycheck, and tried not to think too much about the strange things he noticed. But the strange things kept piling up. Elevators that moved on their own, always stopping at that forbidden 4th floor. Shadows that moved differently than the person casting them. Cold spots so freezing that ice would form on the windows in the middle of summer. Machines that would turn on by themselves, showing vital signs for patients who weren't there. And then there were the patients in the East Wing. The East Wing was where they kept the long-term patients. These were people in comas or vegetative states. People who couldn't move, couldn't talk, sometimes couldn't even breathe on their own. They needed constant care, but they were barely alive. Their families kept them going, hoping for a miracle that would probably never come. David was assigned to the East Wing in his 3rd month. 12 patients, all unconscious, all hooked up to machines that kept them alive. His job was simple. Check their vitals every hour, change their 4 bags when needed, turn them every 2 hours to prevent bed sores, make sure the machines kept working. Easy work, if a little depressing. But on his first night in the East Wing, something happened that changed everything. It was 2 in the morning. The hospital was at its quietest. David was doing his rounds, checking on each patient, room by room, writing down numbers, adjusting pillows, making sure everyone was stable. He entered room 8 to check on Mr. Chen, a 70-year-old man who had been in a coma for 3 years. After a massive stroke, Mr. Chen was sitting up in bed. This was impossible. The man couldn't move. His brain scans showed almost no activity. He had been lying flat for 3 years. But there he was, sitting perfectly straight, his eyes wide open. "Mr. Chen," David said softly, "can you hear me?" Mr. Chen's head turned slowly towards David, too slowly, like someone was turning it for him. His mouth opened, and when he spoke, his voice was clear and strong. This was impossible too. The stroke had damaged his throat. He shouldn't be able to speak. "The doctor is coming," Mr. Chen said. "He comes every night at 3:33. He's looking for new patients. He thinks you'd make a good patient." "What doctor?" David asked, his heart starting to race. "Dr. Morrison. He never left. They killed his body, but he never left. He lives in the walls now, in the electricity, in the machines. He's still doing his work, still fixing broken minds." Mr. Chen smiled, but it wasn't really a smile. It was just his mouth stretching too wide. "He fixed me, see. All better now." David backed toward the door. But Mr. Chen kept talking. "He's been watching you, David. He knows you don't sleep well. He knows about the pills you take. He knows about what happened to your sister. He thinks he can help you. He thinks he can make all the bad thoughts go away. All he has to do is take out the broken parts of your brain." David ran out of the room and back to the nurse's station. His hands were shaking as he checked the monitors. According to the machines, Mr. Chen was still lying flat, still in a deep coma. His brain activity was minimal. His heart rate was normal. Nothing had happened. David looked back down the hallway. Through the window in Mr. Chen's door, he could see him lying in bed, unconscious, exactly as he should be. Maybe David had imagined it. Maybe he was more tired than he thought. Maybe those pills he took for anxiety were causing hallucinations. He decided not to report it. Who would believe him anyway? But then, at exactly 3:33, everything went wrong. All 12 patients in the East Wing flatlined at the same moment. Every monitor started screaming with alarms. David ran from room to room, starting CPR, pushing emergency buttons, yelling for help. But his phone had no signal. The emergency buttons didn't work, and the doors to the East Wing had somehow locked themselves. David was alone with 12 dying patients. He ran to Mr. Chen's room first, started chest compressions, counting out loud like they taught him in training. 1, 2, 3, 4. But Mr. Chen's eyes opened, and he grabbed David's wrists with impossible strength. "Stop fighting it," Mr. Chen said. "The doctor just wants to help." David pulled away and ran to the next room. Mrs. Patterson, 90 years old, brain dead for 6 months. But she was sitting up too, looking at him with eyes that were too aware. "He's coming down from the 4th floor," she said in a voice like grinding metal. "He's bringing his tools." Room after room, David found the same thing. Patients who couldn't possibly be conscious were sitting up, speaking in voices that weren't quite right, all saying the same things about Dr. Morrison. And then the lights went out in the darkness. David heard footsteps, slow, measured footsteps coming down the hallway. With each step, he heard something else. The clink of metal on metal. Surgical tools in a tray. A light appeared at the end of the hallway. Not electric light. Older, a gas lamp. The kind they would have used in the 1920s. The person holding it wore a white coat. But something was wrong with his shape. His shadow on the wall showed that his head was wrong. It was at the wrong angle. Like it wasn't quite attached right. "Good evening, nurse," a voice said. It came from the ceiling, not from the figure. "I'm Dr. Morrison. I understand we have some new patients who need treatment." David closed his eyes tight and prayed. He hadn't prayed since his sister died, but he prayed now. He begged any god that would listen to make this stop, to let him wake up from this nightmare. When he opened his eyes, the lights were back on. The patients were all lying in their beds, unconscious. The monitors showed normal readings, and the door to the East Wing was open. David ran. He didn't stop to tell anyone what happened. He didn't clock out. He just ran to his car and drove away. He never went back. The next night, all 12 patients in the East Wing died at exactly 3:33 in the morning. The official cause of death was listed as equipment failure, but the autopsy reports, which were quickly sealed and hidden, showed something else. Each patient had precise surgical scars on their skulls. Fresh scars. The kind of scars you'd get from a transorbital lobotomy. The hospital closed the East Wing after that. They said it was for renovations, but the renovations never happened. They just sealed it off, locked the doors, and pretended it didn't exist. But here's the thing that still keeps David awake at night. He looked up Dr. Morrison after he quit. Dr. Edward Morrison had been a real person. He'd been the chief of psychiatry at the old asylum in the 1920s. He'd invented new ways to lobotomize patients, ways that killed most of them. He believed that mental illness was caused by evil spirits in the brain, and the only way to cure it was to cut them out. In 1929, a patient named William Hayes somehow got free from his restraints during a lobotomy. He pushed Dr. Morrison down an elevator shaft. The elevator cables decapitated Morrison. His head was found on the 4th floor. His body was in the basement. William Hayes was never seen again. The 4th floor, where Nancy had told David never to go. David lives in California now. He works at a modern hospital with no history, no ghosts, no Dr. Morrison. But sometimes, late at night, he gets calls on his phone. There's no number, just static. And in the static, if he listens carefully, he can hear a voice. "Come back, nurse. Your treatment isn't finished. I haven't fixed you yet." David changes his phone number every few months. The calls always find him. Last week, David got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was an old surgical tool, the kind they used for lobotomies in the 1920s. It was wrapped in a note that said, "Distance doesn't matter. I make house calls now." David is moving again. He knows it won't help. But what else can he do? Because last night he woke up at 3:33 to find all the lights in his apartment had been replaced with gas lamps. And at the foot of his bed stood a figure in a white coat holding a tray of surgical tools, its head hanging at an impossible angle. "Time for your treatment, David," the voice from the ceiling said. "Don't worry, this won't hurt. You won't feel anything ever again." David survived that night. He won't say how, but he knows Dr. Morrison isn't done with him. He knows that one night he won't be lucky enough to escape. One night he'll wake up on an operating table in a hospital that doesn't exist anymore, with a doctor who died almost 100 years ago standing over him, drill in hand, ready to fix what's broken in his mind, ready to make him all better. Story 5. The Family Secret. This last story comes from Michael, and it's about the house where he grew up. But more than that, it's about learning that everything you believed about your life was a lie. Michael grew up in one of those perfect suburban neighborhoods in Ohio. You know the kind. Every lawn is green. Every house has a 2-car garage. Kids ride bikes in the street. Parents have barbecues on weekends. It's the American dream wrapped up in white picket fences and homeowner associations. Michael's house was light blue with white shutters. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, a basement that his dad had turned into a game room. There was a tire swing in the backyard that hung from a huge oak tree. His mom grew tomatoes and sunflowers in the garden. It was perfect, almost too perfect. Michael's earliest memory was from when he was 4 years old. He was playing in his room with his toy trucks when he noticed another boy watching him. The boy looked exactly like Michael. Same brown hair, same green eyes, same Spider-Man t-shirt. But this boy's toys were different. They were older, from the 1970s, maybe. And the weird thing was, Michael couldn't see the toys clearly. He could see the boy holding them, playing with them, but the toys themselves were blurry, like looking at something through fogged glass. "Want to play?" the boy asked. Michael nodded. They played together all afternoon. The boy's name was Tommy. He said he lived in Michael's room too. He said he'd been waiting a long time for a friend. When Michael told his parents about Tommy, they exchanged a look. Just a quick glance at each other. But even at 4 years old, Michael noticed it. It was a scared look. "That's nice, honey," his mom said. "It's good to have an imaginary friend." But Tommy wasn't imaginary. Michael knew the difference. Imaginary friends don't leave bruises when they grab your arm too hard during tag. Imaginary friends don't break your toys when they get angry. Imaginary friends don't stand over your bed at night, watching you sleep with eyes that don't blink. As Michael got older, Tommy appeared less often, but he never really went away. He was always there in the periphery, a shadow in the hallway, a face in the window, a whisper in the walls. And sometimes, when Michael was very quiet and very still, he could hear Tommy crying. Michael's younger sister Amy was born when he was 6. From the moment she came home from the hospital, Tommy was fascinated with her. He would stand over her crib for hours, just watching. Amy would cry and cry, reaching for something that wasn't there, or wasn't supposed to be there. "He won't hurt her," Tommy told Michael one night. "I promise. I just want to make sure she's real." "What do you mean, real?" Michael asked. Tommy didn't answer. He just smiled, that sad smile, and faded away, like he always did when Michael asked too many questions. Michael grew up. He made friends, went to school, played Little League, did all the normal kid things. But Tommy was always there, in the background of his life. And weird things kept happening in the house. Pictures would move on their own, not dramatically, just small shifts. A family photo would be turned slightly. A picture of Michael would be face down when he woke up. Once, he found all the family photos arranged in a circle on the living room floor, with a photo he'd never seen before in the center. It showed a family that looked almost exactly like his, but the photo was old, from the 1970s, when he showed it to his parents. They said he must have found it in the attic, that it was probably the previous owners. But they took the photo, and Michael never saw it again. When Michael was 16, he decided to research the history of their house. His parents had always said they bought it new, that they were the first family to live there. But the house didn't look new. It had that settled feeling of a place that had been lived in for decades. At the library, Michael found old newspaper archives on microfilm. He searched for his address and found something that made his blood run cold. November 15th, 1978, family of 4 found dead in apparent murder-suicide. The address was his house, the exact same house. The article included a grainy black and white photo of the family, parents, a daughter, and a son. They looked so much like Michael's family, it was unsettling. But it was the boy that made Michael's hands shake. The boy looked exactly like Tommy, exactly like Michael. According to the article, the father had killed his wife and daughter before taking his own life. The 4-year-old son, Thomas, was missing and presumed dead, though his body was never found. Neighbors reported that the family had seemed happy, normal, perfect even. No one could explain what had driven the father to violence. Michael printed the article and confronted his parents that night at dinner. His father's face went white. His mother started crying. Amy, now 10 years old, looked confused. "We were going to tell you when you were older," his father said finally. "Tell me what?" "That our house is where some family died. That you lied about it being new." His parents looked at each other again, that same scared look from when he was 4. "Michael," his mother said slowly, "what year were you born?" 1980, Michael answered automatically. "And what's your earliest memory?" "Playing with Tommy when I was 4. "No," his mother said. "Think harder. What's your earliest real memory?" "Something that doesn't involve Tommy," Michael thought, and realized with growing horror that every early memory he had included Tommy. Tommy was in all of them. Tommy had always been there. "I don't understand," Michael said. His father pulled out a folder from a drawer. Inside were documents. Legal documents, court papers, adoption certificates. But when Michael looked closer, none of it made sense. The adoption agency didn't exist. The hospital where he was supposedly born had closed in 1975. His birth certificate had inconsistencies that shouldn't have passed official scrutiny. "Michael," his father said, "we moved into this house in 1979. It was supposed to be a fresh start. We couldn't have children of our own. The house was cheap because of what happened. We thought we could make it a happy home again. But then strange things started happening." His mother continued. "We would hear a child crying, find toys that weren't ours, see a little boy in the hallways. We thought we were going crazy from the stress of not being able to have children. And then, one night," his father said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "we woke up and you were there. In the nursery we'd set up, hoping to adopt. You were just there, 4 years old, asleep in the bed. You had no memory of where you came from. You said your name was Michael, and we were your parents. You knew things only our child would know, except we'd never had a child." Michael felt the world spinning. "That's impossible. We tried to find out where you came from," his mother said. "We called the police, child services, everyone. But there were no missing children matching your description. And the strangest thing was, everyone else seemed to think you'd always been ours. Our families remembered you being born. Our friends remembered your birthday parties. There were photos of you as a baby in our albums that we'd never taken. We realized," his father said, "that the house had given you to us. Or something in the house had. We thought it was a miracle, a gift. We didn't question it. But Tommy," his mother said, tears streaming down her face, "Tommy never left. He was always there, watching you, watching all of us. We pretended not to see him, but we did. We all did." Michael stood up, his chair falling backward. "So what am I? Am I even real?" Before his parents could answer, the lights went out. In the darkness, they heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Slow, deliberate footsteps. "He's coming," Amy whispered. "The sad boy is coming." The lights flickered back on. Tommy stood in the doorway. But he wasn't 4 years old anymore. He was Michael's age, Michael's height, wearing Michael's face. But his eyes were black holes, and when he smiled, his mouth had too many teeth. "Finally," Tommy said. "Finally, you know the truth. You're not real, Michael. You're what they made to replace me. A copy, a fake. a toy for them to love, instead of the family that died here. Michael's memories started flooding back. Not his memories. Tommy's memories. The real memories. The night his father had gone crazy. The screams. The blood. Hiding in the walls. In the spaces between rooms. Dying slowly. Alone. Afraid. And then, not dying. Becoming something else. Something the house kept. Something the house fed. But I'm done being dead. I'm done watching you live my life. It's time to switch places. The room started spinning. Michael felt himself getting smaller, younger, while Tommy grew more solid, more real. His parents screamed, but they couldn't move. Amy tried to run, but the doors wouldn't open. Don't fight it, Tommy said. You're going back to where you came from. Back to nothing. And I'm taking what should have been mine. Michael's last clear thought was a prayer. Not for himself, but for Amy, his sister, the only real thing in his fabricated life. And maybe that prayer was heard, because suddenly Amy stood up, 10 years old, small, scared, but standing between Tommy and Michael. No, she said simply. Michael is my brother. You're just an echo. Tommy laughed. I'm more than an echo, little girl. I'm the original. I'm what this house remembers. But memories fade, and Michael is here now. He's real because we love him. You're just anger and sadness and old pain. For a moment, Tommy's form flickered. Just for a moment, but it was enough. Michael found his voice. I may not be real, Michael said, but I choose to exist. I choose this family. I choose this life. Tommy screamed, a sound like breaking glass and tearing metal. He rushed at Michael, but passed right through him, because Michael had made a choice that Tommy never could. Michael had chosen to live, while Tommy had only chosen to haunt. Tommy faded, becoming transparent, becoming nothing. But before he disappeared completely, he whispered, I'll always be here. In the walls, in the memories, waiting. The house shook once, like it was settling. Then everything was quiet. Michael's family never spoke about that night again. They moved out a month later, across the country, to California. They left everything behind, starting completely fresh. But Michael knows the truth now. He knows he's not exactly real, not in the way other people are. He's something the house made, something born from tragedy and loneliness and the desperate wish of would-be parents. He doesn't age quite right. His reflection sometimes looks like someone else. And late at night, he can hear Tommy calling from thousands of miles away. Come home, Michael. Come back to the house. You belong here with me. Michael will never go back. But sometimes he wonders what happened to the house. It's still there, still for sale. The price keeps dropping. Families move in but never stay long. They report strange things. A boy in the walls. Toys that appear from nowhere. Photos that change when no one's looking. And sometimes they report seeing another boy. One who looks real, solid, alive. He tells them his name is Michael and asks if they've seen his family. He says he's been looking for them for such a long time. He says he just wants to go home, but Michael is in California. He checks every morning to make sure. He looks in the mirror and says his name out loud, confirming he still exists. He hugs his parents and Amy, grounding himself in their love. He's real enough. He has to be. Because if he ever stops believing that, if he ever doubts for too long, he knows what will happen. he'll fade like Tommy did, and Tommy will take his place. The house is patient. It remembers everything, and it's waiting for Michael to forget who he chose to be, waiting for him to remember what he really is. So there you have it. 5 true horror stories from Reddit that prove real life can be scarier than any movie or book. These aren't just stories. These are warnings. Every creaking floorboard in your house might be footsteps. Every shadow might be watching you. Every reflection might show something that shouldn't be there. The woman in the walls could be in any old building, living in spaces you don't even know exist. That camping trip you're planning, maybe think twice about going too far from civilization. Your grandmother's basement, your parents' attic, that storage unit you haven't opened in years. What secrets are hiding there? If you work night shifts, if you work in old buildings, if you work alone, remember David's story. Some things never leave their workplace, even after death. And your childhood home, the place where you felt safest. Maybe you weren't as alone as you thought. Tonight, when you go to bed, you'll probably tell yourself, these are just stories. That's what we all tell ourselves. That's how we sleep at night. But deep down, you know the truth. These things happened. They're happening right now to someone, somewhere, maybe even to you. Before you go to sleep tonight, do me a favor. Check your locks. Check your windows. Look in your closets and under your bed, not because I'm trying to scare you, but because it's better to be safe than sorry. And if you hear something strange in the night, if you see something that shouldn't be there, if you feel like you're being watched, trust your instincts. Run. Get out. Don't investigate, because curiosity might satisfy the cat, but in these stories, curiosity gets you something much worse than killed. It gets you remembered by things that should be forgotten. Sweet dreams, everyone. Try to get some sleep. You'll need your strength, because tomorrow night, the real nightmare begins. Remember, I post new horror stories every week. Real stories, true stories, stories that will make you question everything you thought was safe. Hit that subscribe button if you dare. Ring the notification bell if you're brave enough. And comment below with your own scary experiences. Who knows? Your story might be featured next time. Until then, keep the lights on, keep your doors locked, and whatever you do, never ignore that feeling that something's wrong, because it usually is. Good night, everyone. Or should I say, good luck.